I'm Samantha Stevens with AMR. I'm here with Mr. Stan Rowe, the Chief Scientific Officer of Edwards Life Sciences. Mr. Rowe, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role with Edwards?
Absolutely, Samantha. It's a pleasure to be here. And as a Chief Scientific Officer, I get to oversee a lot of the research and development that goes on here in our company. And our company is focused on kind of two major areas. One is developing products for structural heart disease like artificial heart valves, and then critical care diagnostics, which is how we look at patients and their hemodynamics, especially when they're in a critical care setting. I also have the pleasure of developing brand new products, which is an awful lot of fun.
That sounds like fun. So about the artificial heart valve, can you describe it in general terms, like its function and its composition?
Sure. So the idea of a valve itself is that you get one-way flow, right? Because imagine if the heart were just pumping and there were no valves, blood would come in and then exit immediately, so it would just slosh in and out. So the idea is to keep blood flowing in one direction. So we have two valves, the natural valves, that lead into the heart and two that lead out of the heart. So the first valve you encounter on the right side of the heart is called the tricuspid valve. So it takes all the venous blood from your body. That blood goes through into the right ventricle. And then when the right ventricle contracts, it goes through the pulmonic valve, sending the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. And then after you've oxygenated that blood, it's going to come back into the left atrium and go through the mitral valve. The mitral valve leads it right into the left ventricle, which is the big pumping chamber of the heart. And when that contracts, it goes through the aortic valve. And the aorta, of course, is that big, it's the largest blood vessel in the body, and it's the one that all the arteries connect to.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
So, under what conditions do patients typically need an artificial heart valve?
Well, there are two kind of fundamental conditions where people have either a leaky valve or what's called a stenotic valve, where the valve actually gets rigid and doesn't open well enough. And in both of those conditions, they need surgery typically if it gets serious enough.
So what are the product's benefits for these patients that do need the artificial heart valve?
Well, it's, surgeons and cardiologists are the two people that can treat valvular heart disease. And so the cardiothoracic surgeon is the guy who normally treats most of this disease. And of course, it used to be that the only opportunity was open heart surgery. And what the surgeons do is amazing, right? So they put a big incision in your chest, saw open your sternum, which is that bone right here in the breastplate, open you up. You're anesthetized, don't worry. And they stop your heart while they do these operations. And your heart can be stopped for an hour. Some patients will say, I was dead for an hour, right? Well, they're not really dead, of course, but their heart is stopped. And of course, they need something to replace that faulty valve with. And they can sometimes repair it, especially the mitral valve, but the aortic valve they almost always replace. And so they cut out the diseased valve and they're putting in this artificial valve. So you need a valve that's going to last you for a lifetime, right? You don't want to have that procedure over again. So what you need is a very durable, high-performance valve that behaves as close to the way your normal valve would as possible. Not so easy to make, though.
I imagine not. So can you explain the aortic heart valves in a little more detail, please?
So these are the transcatheter valves. So these are not the surgical valves we implant.
Right.
But it'll kind of give you an example. So this is a transcatheter valve. This is one that's balloon expandable. Let me put that in your hand. It's made with a stainless steel outside frame on it, and then of course the inside is made from that bovine pericardium I was telling you about, and then it's got some fabrics around it so that it seals properly. It takes quite a while to design one of these, a few years, and then a few more years of testing. And then we end up being able to do our first clinical trials. And they take several years to make sure that we get it all right, because these have to work right every single time. Now those, they don't go in like that. They're actually crimped down. We have a crimper, and we crimp them down onto a balloon catheter like this. The balloon catheter is actually quite long. It's not this short. And it's about 4 feet long. And that balloon catheter is introduced through the femoral artery, which is in the upper part of your leg. And under x-rays, we track it all the way up from your femoral artery to your iliac artery to your inferior, your abdominal aorta, and around your abdominal aorta to the ascending aorta and into the valve. And then when we inflate this balloon under very high pressures with water, not with air, it forms that valve. And it pushes the diseased valve out of the way and starts working instantly.
It's amazing that something this small can have such a life-changing effect.
It takes about an hour, a little more than an hour, to do one of these procedures, whereas surgery takes 3 or 4 hours. The nice thing is the patients are able to go home many times 3, 4, or 5 days after a procedure, rather than the long recovery times it takes from open heart surgery.
In 2012, Edwards Life Sciences achieved net sales of $1.9 billion. The company is now investing in the new Sapien XT valve and the Edwards Intuiti Elite valve system, and has received clearances to export the new products to several nations across the globe. Edwards Life Sciences is prepared for another successful year.